Alright, to start things off, welcome to Premier Study. Here's one thing I like about them. They do at least give you some price projection, although they do not give you a time frame, but they're saying that currently 942. They say it could go on the low end, $21 projected, mean 24, high of 30. So that would be pretty huge gains, as you can see. Now, we have to figure out why in the world would people think that that is even possible. Well, they had a great day today. So if we look at the 6-month chart, we can see that they were here at $2. Had they peak 20, back here at about 9. So, okay, I don't know. Let's find out about this story. There's been some interesting news come out from them, and one thing I'm really excited about is this recent acquisition. So let's check out this news from September 2nd, which I think is very, very positive for Sorrento. It says Sorrento Therapeutics and Smart Farm Therapeutics announced today that Sorrento has completed, past tense, has completed the acquisition of Smart Farm. And it talks a little bit about what they are and what they do, but it says gene-encoded protein therapeutics company. It's important for the delivery platforms for the COVID and other rare diseases. So why this is important is it says by encoding the antibody sequence into a plasmid, a single injection into someone's muscle could potentially lead the person to make their own antibodies in vitro for months. So the big idea with this is A, you give the information to your body once and basically teach it how to create the antibodies to protect you from the virus that you're looking to find protection for. The other thing is it gives you a long-term protection. So it's not like you got to go back into the hospital or wherever and get boosters. Basically you're training your body to protect itself. So that's one thing I want to ask you guys who aren't that familiar with Sorrento. How many products do you think they have related to COVID-19? 1, 2, 3? So actually they have more than 3. One of them you can see here is the STI 2020 DNA plasmid candidate against COVID-19. Now, before we move on, I actually want to jump back a little bit, August 20th, because this news report from Sorrento gives us something that the one on September 2nd did not. If I'm Sorrento, I really want to have anything significant in-house. I don't want to have any problems of some outside company changing their strategy or whatever. If I have anything that is a key part of my process, I want to make sure that I have control over that. And that's what I love about this acquisition. It says Sorrento and Smart Farm also previously announced a research and development collaboration to encode and expressed in vivo, which we'll look at that, what that means in a second, Sorrento's proprietary SARS-CoV-2 neutralizing monoclonal antibodies. So that part is proprietary already to Sorrento. But the other part, check this out, it says utilizing Smart Farm's gene mab plasmid nanoparticle platform. If you are Sorrento and you lose this platform, you're in trouble. So that's why I love this acquisition. It tells me a couple things. One is that Sorrento's leadership, their executives, they're not messing around. They're really playing for keeps. They want to acquire the parts that they're going to need to go from A to Z, all the way through the process. They don't want to have any glitches, and I would do the exact same thing if I was them. If I could acquire an essential part of the puzzle, a key piece of the process, I would, and they have. So that's really cool. I really, really like that. Now, I don't know if that explains the stock price that we saw today, the 13% jump. I also don't know if it's going to legitimize any of those 120% increases up to $22, $24, $30 a share. I'm not saying that. I don't know. I do hold this in a very small proportion, just like 4 or 5 shares, not very much. But I just want to get a little bit of skin in the game, so it would drive me to look and do this research and see if I wanted to really get into it. So far, it's pretty interesting. So one thing you got to ask yourself, if you're really going to believe that this stock is going to double, like some of those analysts just showed us, you got to understand why. You got to have a reason why. You got to have some kind of story of why you would think that. Well, one thing I'll leave this for you. It says, for instance, in vivo methods generate antibodies with high affinity to the target antigen in a cost-effective way. Now, that's important for a company who's bleeding cash, who sales are less than the expenses. It says these methods are ideal to generate antibodies intended for analytical purposes like diagnostics, environmental, and food monitoring. However, if the antibodies are intended for therapy and if they are generated in non-human hosts, which they do sometimes, it is necessary to introduce extra steps in the process to engineer the antibody and increase its capability with the human immune system. So maybe it's an extra step, but apparently it's more cost effective. They go on, they talk about some of the benefits of the in vitro custom antibody generation, but I just wanted to give you that. You can read the whole article. It's a little bit longer than I wanted to read, and it's a bit technical, so but it'd be some good digging. The article states that there is one problem if you're going to use antibodies. It's that they're basically expensive to make and usually must be administered intravenously. They said that's not really ideal if your goal is to prevent a disease in a large number of people. That's why Sorrento says its acquisition of Smart Farm is so important. Smart Farm's technology uses pieces of DNA known as plasmids that can carry instructions for making antibodies. When injected into a person's arm, these pieces of DNA get absorbed by nearby muscle and act like a do-it-yourself guide for them to make their own antibodies. So kind of, I guess it uses the body instead of them doing the whole process in their labs, which is expensive. They do the first couple steps and let your body do the rest at no extra charge. Apparently, I mean, I don't know how safe it is, but that's why we do all these tests. Their CEO says the integration of the plasmid DNA technology with our existing antibody products has the potential to make antibody therapy much more accessible and affordable for patients. So that's good in the short term. It's also good in the long term if they can get an edge on the market on that. Then they just talk about the deal a little bit, 1.76 million shares, which is an estimate, at times 1060 a share. So it's basically a equity purchase. They gave Smart Farm Sorrento shares. And if you do the math on this, it's a little bit short. It comes up like 800,000 short of what they advertised, the 19 point, I think it was 4 million. So I mentioned earlier in the video that they had more than 3 COVID programs. They have a lot. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have one for the cytokine storm, a vaccine, an ACE2 receptor decoy, an antibody cocktail, an antibody test, and a diagnostic test. So let's look at their diagnostic test, since that's the one that they're trying to get the FDA to approve under their emergency use authorization. There's a bit of a story here with Yale and with Columbia, but basically we see that there's a competing product called Saliva Direct, which came out of the Yale School of Public Health. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has already granted that thing an emergency use authorization all the way back August 15th of 2020. So this is not the drug or the test that Sorrento is licensed. Sorrento, it says here, Columbia University researchers also created a test that can detect the presence of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in a saliva sample. And like Yale's Saliva Direct test, Columbia's saliva diagnostic test offers significant advantages. It's quick. It's significantly less unpleasant for individuals than the test requiring nasal swabs, amen to that are commonly used today. Neither test requires nucleic acid extraction step. So, and then July 29, 2020, Sorrento announced that they had licensed the rights for the Columbia COVID test using the saliva samples. The company plans to market the test under the Covi-trace brand name. So we saw that before. That's this one right here, top line. And what did they tell us? Emergency use authorization application is expected. So I don't know what the holdup is on that, because this is September 16th, and they announced that July 29th. So they should hurry up. It says COVID trace isn't yet available, but what he says is, he kind of hypes it up, their CEO does, by commenting that it could be an economy opener. So that's pretty cool. Let's look at a little bit more technical about it. So this article basically says that the COVID trace should still be able to compete in the market, even though they're a latecomer. That they can use at point of care, so they don't have to send these samples to a lab, which is super great. It says the saliva sample is mixed with enzymes and reagents in a tube, then heated for 30 minutes or less, and then you get the color, positive or negative. Well, this is really interesting, 30 minutes or less. So I'm going to say 30, okay? 30 minutes or less. I'm going to say 30 is how long it's going to take. Well, one of the problems is Abbott Labs came out with one that takes half the time and about half the price. Abbott's fast, $5, 15-minute, easy-to-use COVID-19 antigen test receives FDA emergency use authorization. Again, already beating out Sorrento. Mobile app displays test results to help our return to daily life, ramping prediction of 50 million tests a month. Now, Abbott's stock hasn't really gone crazy. It has definitely come up. But, again, I don't know if this is enough to be buying the Abbott stock. But I thought it was really interesting because just going back really, really quickly, we saw that it was 30 minutes to do the Sorrento test. And we saw up here, so we see from Andy Slavitt, who's a former Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services acting administrator in the Obama administration, however much credence or credit you want to give to him for his opinion. He says that the materials needed to perform the test are about $4, and he predicted that the total cost of the test would likely be close to 10. That's total cost. So you're going to have the markup for the consumers. He said that was good. He said it was a lot less than the $100 for the current COVID-19 diagnostic test. But let's just say he's right. Say that the materials to put into this thing is $4. Let's say with all the extra costs, the packaging costs, all the other overhead costs, pushes it up to 10. Now this company has to make a profit on it, so they're going to put some kind of profit margin on there, like 20, 30%, 40%, I don't know. So that's going to make it what, $14? Well, I'm telling you, why not just go and get the $5 one from Abbott? It takes half the time. and you can read the results on your phone. That sounds kind of like a no-brainer. I don't see how Sorrento's going to be able to compete on that. But like I said, the thing that I do really love is that they have this in vivo process, that they have this proprietary antibodies that they're doing, and that now they have full access and full control over the platform that they were using previously from Smart Farm. Well, now that they did that acquisition, yeah, it cost some money, but it cost some shares. It wasn't a cash deal, like I said. So one thing with these pharmaceutical companies is, you see, I mean, when they have so many drugs that are a maybe, you can go and you can try to estimate, say, the number of possible users. You could do the market size. You could do the price per unit. You could do the growth rate per year. You could do, how many years are they going to be able to really run this out based on a patent? Is it a new patent that they're going to be able to get, minus any lawsuits that might happen, or copyright infringements or patent infringements or whatever? Maybe somebody comes along with a better product. This is really hard to do if you want to do the DCF valuation. So I think what you're basically trying to do is you're trying to find one or two things that really seems to give them a decisive advantage. So we can go back to May 15th and get up a little bit of information on some of their preclinical trials. And so it says that the company released the details of preclinical research on Friday, announcing that it found an antibody that provides 100% inhibition of the virus infection of healthy cells after 4 days incubation. It said that study still had to undergo peer review. It was an in vitro laboratory study, meaning that it was not an actual human being, but it's still promising development as the company continues to work on the product of an antibody cocktail that can provide protection against the SARS-2. So here's the cocktail. They call it the Covi-shield. It says, additionally, the company will also be pursuing the development of the ST-1499 antibody on its own as dedicated standalone therapy. So therapy, not vaccine. The company is already in discussion with regulators about how to expedite development of that potential treatment, and is ramping up its production and capacity as well, with the goal of producing as many as 1 million doses at the same time it pursues FDA approval for its use. So this is probably what all the news was about. Sorrento receives U.S. FDA clearance to proceed with the phase 1 clinical trials of the STI-1499 Covi-guard neutralizing antibody in patients who are tested positive. So this one actually says, and I might have been wrong, because they're calling this the STI the Covi-guard. Covi-guard. So the STI 1499, they're calling it the Covi-guard. And what they say is that this one also, as Sorrento previously announced in preclinical studies, STI 1499, the Covi-guard demonstrated 100% in vitro neutralizing effect against the virus, preventing infection of healthy cells in such preclinical in vitro studies. Says it was further evaluated in preclinical studies using multiple strains, including the highly contagious DG14G. And a lot of people are talking about this. This is apparently the really contagious one, as it says. They said that in these preclinical studies, the antibody has been 100% effective against the highly contagious D614G variant strain at similar doses to those observed in experiments with the USA WA1 2020 strain. Maybe this is the one coming out of Washington, University of Washington. Anyways, they ran in hamsters. The highest proposed dose was 200 milligrams per patient. And they say that because the 1499 is so potent that it may allow for rapid scaling up, because I guess you don't have to put so much in there. It's like the difference between manufacturing orange juice concentrate versus orange juice. There's a lot less volume. Maybe it's a lot less steps. Maybe it's easier. I don't know. So I'd say, it's something to keep your eye on. It's good news. That's why we saw the 13% jump today. Positive, phase 1 clearance for their trial, but it's phase 1. A lot of people are in phase 1 and have been in phase 1 or phase 2/3 for a while. So, we've seen a little bit about this one. We're waiting on these, but I think their diagnostic programs are really going to have a tough time competing with Abbot. The weird thing to me about these small pharmaceutical stocks is that some good news comes out and their price jumps, anywhere from like 10 to 25%, and then it slowly dies off over the next 3 to 4 weeks. It's not like entry into phase 1 is going to mean any more revenues. It is a positive sign, but it's a long ways away from revenue. So I think, it's the easiest thing to do if you're going to play these is wait for those bottoms, and then just invest if you want to swing trade it and wait for that next piece of good news, hope that it comes out. It seems like fairly easily. I think you only have to have like a 50% effective rate, and we'll try to look at that in the future. But it's like you basically have to show that you've done more good than harm, and if so, then you're going to be approved on some conditional, maybe like EUA type of situation. So I think this is a very interesting sector. I don't know that I like Sorrento more than I like Altimmune. At this point, I really like Altimmune a lot more. One thing I do have in my notes is that both Altimmune and Sorrento, they have stable, like non-injection type of vaccine. So the T-Viva 19, I believe, is in my notes. It's an oral tablet, and then Altimmune, they're doing this like nasal spray thing for their vaccine and their therapy. So if you want to check out my video on Altimmune, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, I hope that really helps you out. Obviously, this company's still doing cancer drugs, still doing pain, still doing lymphatic delivery. So that's I just wish they had a better diagnostic test. It's just not that impressive to me. Okay, thanks.